Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for today's video we've got something different. Instead of doing an intro, we're going to jump right in with my top 10 underrated Ashes of War that you need to try. We're going to start at number 10 with Spectral Lance. So this is a really cool Ash of War. Now it's not going to do a ton of damage because it doesn't really scale with anything on the Ash of War, but the cool part about it is it does somewhere around 30-35 poise damage per hit, which is an incredible amount of poise damage from a range. This makes it useful for combinations with other builds. Towards the end of this video, there's actually going to be a combination build that uses Spectral Lance. It's pretty cool in the amount of posture damage you get from it, and in this case, since we're fighting a dragon, we're hitting its head, we're getting decent damage too. So I would absolutely say, no question, that this one can be considered underrated, no doubt about it. The amount of posture damage you're getting, the amount of range it has, and the fact that it has relatively good tracking too. We get a nice poise break in there and a critical break. We're using the Naginata. It really is a cool Ash of War and definitely underrated. So right away, I recommend maybe even adding this to your build. Definitely check out the build at the end if you're interested in this one because it's a cool combination build. The dragonflies always get in the way when I'm trying to bring up my equipment here. We're going to jump into equipment now and stats. For equipment, we have the Naginata. We have it on a Cult Affinity with Spectral Lance. We're using any seal for buffs. Our Dragon Community seal is good here. You can check out the armor set. Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword Salesman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Millicent's Prosthesis, Thorny Tear, Faith Tear. Yeah, I built around using the Ash of War and then also, of course, going up close with the Naginata because you're going to get probably 90-something bleed with these stats too and good damage. We have 60 Arcane, 60 Vigor, and we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength to buff this. And the location, you can find it at Rhea Lucaria Academy, and it is by, I believe, the Church of the Cuckoo, Site of Grace, the church there, and you can see me right on the map. It's right in that general area. There's a Teardrop Scarab. And at number 9, we have Stamp Upward Cut. This is definitely an underrated one for me too because it does around the same posture damage as Lion's Claw. Now, Lion's Claw has better hyper armor. Typically, you really can't get knocked out of it. It's a little bit easier to use, does more damage, but this does relatively the same posture damage, which for me puts it on this list. There's nothing really that bad about Stamp Upward Cut. If you're going to run a strength build, this isn't a bad Ash of War to have, and it goes well with Guts Greatsword for good damage, good poise damage, around 40 poise damage per use of the Ash of War, and overall just solid, well-rounded damage, solid, reliable choice. Yeah, there's not a crazy amount to talk about with this one because it's relatively straightforward to use. You just hit the Ash of War once and then hit it again to get that extra hit in. And of course, you're going to get, again, around 40 poise damage. Not too bad at all. We're going to jump into equipment and stats. For equipment, we have Guts Greatsword and Heavy Affinity. We're using Stamp Upward Cut, any seal for buffs. You can check out the armor set there. We have Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, Ritual Shield Talisman, Green Turtle Talisman. We have Stone Barb Crack Tier, Faith Tier. We're using Market Shackle to stun the boss. Let's talk about stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, we have 66 Strength, 99 when we're two-handing this, 23 Mind, 32 Endurance. We have a decent amount of Endurance for this build. For the weight, we did hit 51 Poise as well, and we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength to buff this build. And where can you find Stamp Upward Cut? Well, you can get this from Knight Burnell at War Master Shack in Limgrave. This is one you can get relatively early on, along with Guts Greatsword. Yeah, I think it actually comes with Guts Greatsword, but at least when you have the Ash, you can put it in Heavy Affinity. At number 8, we have Sacred Rings of Light, which is a really cool holy option. This is one that's really fun, too. A lot of the ones on this list are fun. This kind of reminds me of a holy version of Thunderbolt, which actually made this list as well, because you could spam it. It doesn't really cost a lot of FP, and it's a really convenient Ash of War, and in this case, I put it on the Sword Spear, which is an excellent weapon. If you're waiting for DLC and you're looking for fun things to try, I would definitely try Sacred Rings of Light. No question about it, this is one I recommend trying out. Sure, it's not going to be amazing in the end game because Holy isn't great in general, but if you're looking for a good Holy option, this is definitely an underrated one. Maybe even grab the Erdtree seal and mix in something like Black Blade. The combination would be pretty cool. You could send out, the low FP cost, quick Rings of Light, use them, and then switch to Black Blade when you want to get some awesome percentage damage, and they're basically boosted by the same things like the Holy Tier and Sacred Scorpion Charm as well. Also, I might want to add that this dragon on New Game Plus 7 is a little bit of a challenge. He actually has a really frustrating moveset. I'm not a fan of the lightning dragons, the regular lightning dragons anyway. This one's pretty cool because it's kind of unique in the Altless Plateau. Later, some of the ones in Farum Azula on New Game Plus 7 just have way too much HP, and their movesets can be a little bit frustrating. Speaking of which, last poll I did, the most underrated dragon was the frozen one in Mountaintop, so that was interesting. We have the Sword, Spear, and Sacred Affinity with Sacred Rings of Light, Erdtree Seal, part of the Tree Sentinel set on. We have the Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword Talisman, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Erdtree's Favorite +2, Holy Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 26 Endurance, 16 Strength, 17 Dexterity. We have 80 Faith with the Faith tier, and then we're using Golden Vow and Hellish Abriri to buff this build. And where do you find Sacred Rings of Light? Well, you can find it in the Swamp of Ionia, which is in Caelid, and I'll show it on the map here in a second. It's from a Teardrop Scarab. I hit him just once, and there it is, Sacred Ring of Light in Caelid. All right, now we're going to get into some favorites, and at number 7 we have Thunderbolt, one that I like a lot that I feel like is underrated because it doesn't do massive lightning damage or anything, but it's spammable and it's really helpful in a lot of situations. And here's our most underrated dragon based on that poll, and we're able to do a lot of damage with him that kind of stacks up. Yeah, individually it's not amazing, but as we continue to use it over and over again and spam it easy, it's also easy to roll out of. You can build up a lot of damage. This for me is actually like an improvement over Honed Bolt too, because it has a long charge time in the beginning and then you can use it successively after that. With Thunderbolt, low FP cost, and you can keep spamming it. Certainly one you should try out if you're looking for a Dexterity Lightning build, because this one is going to scale with Dexterity since Lightning on weapon scales with Dex. Let's jump into equipment and stats. For equipment, we have the Nagakiba and Lightning Affinity with Thunderbolt. Any seal will do. We have part of the Tree Sentinel set on. We have the Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword Talisman, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Erdtree's Favorite +2, Lightning Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on this one, we're running a pretty strong Dexterity build, 60 Vigor, 70 Dexterity. We have 25 Faith with the Faith tier, 22 Mind, 26 Endurance, 18 Strength. And we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. If you have the Faith for it, Howl would be better because it'll add damage to Thunderbolt. Let's talk about the location. Now, I'm in Ashen Capital here, but normally with the regular capital city, you would go to Avenue Balcony, Site of Grace, and it's by the Knights out there. You have to jump over the side. At number 6, we have one that honestly I think is a favorite for a lot of people, but kind of still is underrated, and that's Impaling Thrust. Now, Impaling Thrust does really good poise damage on a Dexterity build. It's actually quite solid, giving you around 35 poise damage per hit. That's a huge advantage too as a Dexterity build, because running a Strength build, yeah, you're going to get a lot of poise damage on some of the bigger weapons, colossal weapons like Guts, Greatsword, and whatnot. For some reason, the Giant Crusher doesn't do a lot of poise, but a lot of them in general will give you good poise damage. If you're looking for a good poise option in Dexterity, Impaling Thrust is great. And if you throw it on a Keen Nagakiba and then you put Bloodflame Blade on it, you're going to get probably 1 or 2 bleed procs throughout the fight as well, especially as you get in those critical breaks, and then you can throw in regular attacks to continue to build up bleed, because with Bloodflame Blade you'll have relatively around 85 bleed build up too. Making this a solid one for critical breaks and a little bit of bleed build up. We have the Keen Nagakiba with Impaling Thrust, we have any seal for buffs, we have 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, Green Turtle Talisman, Ritual Shield Talisman, Stone Barb, Crack Tier, Faith Tier. Let's talk about stats. By the way, I got a new mic. I'm still getting adjusted to it. Hopefully it sounds pretty clear. It sounds like it sounds clear. We have 60 Vigor. We have 70 Dexterity, same as last build. Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, Bloodflame Blade. Let's talk about location. Once again, Knight Burnell at the War Master Shack will sell this in Limgrave, and you can get it early. And next up, we have another favorite on this list for me. At number 5, we have Earthshaker, which has a really cool follow-up attack I think a lot of people forget about, and the initial slam does good damage too. Yeah, this is one I actually love for strength builds. If you're looking for a fun time specifically, this does enough damage to work for a lot of bosses in the game, but it's also really fun to use, especially when you land the follow-up attack on some of the lower poise enemies. Now, he does get a backstab in on me here, which was probably my fault because I didn't dodge at the right time, and I did see it coming, I just didn't react in time, but you're going to see at the end here, we do make up for it. That follow-up attack, especially with enemies that don't have a lot of poise, is absolutely awesome as it sends them flying. A lot of people, by the way, another quick tip, forget about this follow-up attack in a lot of different Ashes of War. Another one is Golden Land 2, which has the same exact follow-up and works well with Guts Greatsword for range on that follow-up, which scales with AR, by the way. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have Guts, Greatsword, and Heavy Affinity. We have Earthshaker on it. Any seal for buffs. You can check out the armor set. Hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander. Ritual Sword Talisman. Ritual Shield Talisman. Green Turtle Talisman. Stone Barb Crack Tier. Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 32 Endurance. We have 66 Strength, 99 when we're two-handing this, 25 Faith with the Faith tier. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Strength to buff this. And where's the location? It's in the Altless Plateau, right here by the Altless Highway Junction, Site of Grace. Below it, somewhere in that vicinity, there's a Teardrop Scarab. And the next one up here is another poise-breaking machine, and that is Unsheathe. I feel like this one's underrated too. You don't hear about it as much. A lot of people start with this and then kind of ditch it later on, but the truth is in the later game, even on New Game Plus 7, it can still poise break really well. Also, I believe we got a posture break there. He just ended up dying at the end. It was a posture break, though, I believe. Keen Nagakiba with Unsheathe on it. We have Blood Flame Blade 2. Any seal for buffs, 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword, and Shield Talisman. Green Turtle Talisman, Stone Barb Crack tier, Faith tier. Let's talk about stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 26 Endurance. We have 70 Dexterity. We have 18 Strength for the Nagakiba. We have 25 Faith with the Faith tier. And we're using Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Blood Flame Blade to buff this. And the location is, it's by the Dragon Burnt Ruins in Limgrave, and you can grab this one early too, which is awesome. And at number 3, we have one on here that I know some people are going to disagree with, that is underrated, but Spinning Strikes. And the reason I put this one on here is because a lot of people think Spinning Weapon is significantly better and kind of makes this obsolete, but I disagree. This does a lot of physical damage and a lot of bleed buildup. Yeah, I've had many comments saying Spinning Weapon and Wild Strikes are better, but I gotta tell you, Spinning Strikes does a lot of damage too. We have the Occult Grave Scythe. We have an Occult Affinity with Spinning Strikes. We're using the Dragon Communion Seal, White Mass, hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Authority tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 25 Endurance, 22 Dexterity, 18 Strength, 60 Arcane, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, and we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength to buff this build. And the location of Spinning Strikes, you have to do a quest line, or you could take out the NPC at Castle Morn, but that's where it starts, and you can net yourself the Spinning Strikes Astrovore. And number 2 on here is Bloodblade for me. This one is really underrated. You can see right there we stacked up 11,000 damage, and it does use a little bit of your HP, which I know some people don't like, but overall I feel like this is underrated and can do massive damage. If you're wondering why I have no armor on, Bloodblade is purely physical damage, so if you can get under a weight of 16, you'll get a 12% increase from the Blue Dancer charm to any physical damage attacks, including Bloodblade. Which is a huge benefit when you're using Bloodblade because it does decent damage to begin with. It's not bad at all. Generally speaking, depending on the boss, you'll get anywhere between 500 and 1,000 damage, and you're going to continue to build up bleed from a distance too. Yeah, this is one I've always liked. It's appeared in a lot of my videos. I love the ability to throw it on the Nagakiba too. A lot of people stick to the Reduvia and think it's a lot better because you don't lose any HP, but overall for me, I actually prefer being able to put it on a weapon of my choice. Yeah, the Nagakiba is so cool with this. I really enjoy this combination. It's probably one of my favorite combinations in the game is using the Nagakiba with Bloodblade. We actually did a build at the end of this, by the way, that combined Spectral Lance with Bloodblade, and it came out really well, so be sure to stick around for that one. Also, if you're not subbed yet to my channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Elden Ring DLC is only around 5 weeks away, probably 34 days from the time this video is released. I cannot wait. I'm going to be covering it like crazy. Definitely sub. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have the Nagakiba with Bloodblade, we have the Dragon Communion Seal, we have the White Mask on only, we have the Shard of Alexander, Blue Dancer Charm, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Thorny tier, Faith tier. Let's talk about stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 25 Endurance, 18 Strength, 22 Dexterity, we have 60 Arcane, and we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. And where's Bloodblade located? It's located in the Altless Plateau. You just go around and down there from the Erdtree Gazing Hills, Site of Grace, to grab Bloodblade. And at number one, we have probably the most underrated Ash of War in the entire game, and that's Square Off. Square Off does 40 poise damage per charged attack hit, which is a huge amount, while also doing a decent amount of damage in general. I love this Ash of War. You have the light attack, which is going to give you around 30 poise damage, and then you have the charge attack, which has decent range on it too, and that's going to give you 40 poise damage, which is great. Even on New Game Plus 7, you can break some of the bigger bosses in the game using Square Off. And you have a lot of options in terms of what you want to do too. I like a flame art version of this. For this one, I went for heavy affinity on the broadsword because it scales well there. You can do quality, keen affinity, and as I mentioned, faith. Even if you want to go with blood affinity, get some bleed build up in there, this is a solid Ash of War. Even ended up, of course, with a posture break on the big dragon here in Caelid. Well, not the big dragon, but a decent-sized dragon in Caelid that has a good amount of poise because Square Off is reliable that way. Having that flat, pretty much 40 poise damage it amounts to on the charged hits can be massive and can help you immensely. And then overall, the amount of damage you're going to get per hit, generally speaking, is going to be between about 1,000 and 2,500 damage, depending on the boss damage type. I think it amounts to, depending on weapon, maybe standard or pierce damage, but either way, it's not a bad damage type either on top of the poise damage you're getting in between the damage. Well, I just said damage a lot, but yeah, it is good. It's kind of like really underrated. This Ash of War isn't talked about much, but it's one of the best ways to break on New Game Plus 7. Now we have the broadsword with Square Off and heavy affinity, any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, Green Turtle Talisman, Ritual Shield Talisman, Stone Barb Crack tier, Faith tier. Let's talk about stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, we have 66 Strength, 23 Mind, 32 Endurance, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, and we're going to be using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. And where do you get Square Off? Well, you can get Square Off in Iofa River, however you say it. There it is on the map there, and that's going to be in the eastern section of Limgrave. You can take the elevator down. You can grab this one early too, net yourself Square Off, and you're going to be surprised with the amount of poise damage you get. This Ash truly is great. Alright, now we got our combination build, which I called Spectral Destruction. We're going to take on the Magma Worm here in Gale Tunnel, or Jail Tunnel, however you say it. Anyways, we're going to use Spectral Lance to start to get in some poise damage, and we're going to end up combining it with Bloodblade. So each one of these is going to give us, as we mentioned, around 30-something poise damage, so it's a good way to posture break. We're going to continue to apply pressure on the Magma Worm, see how many times it takes to hit him. I think it's just going to end up taking one more. He's going to get posture broken here. And then during that long animation is the perfect opportunity to use Bloodblade with some bleed procs in there and a lot of damage as a whole. We were able to switch the Nagakiba with Bloodblade, take him down fast, and the combination actually works excellent. I think Spectral Lance can go with a lot of builds. Let's jump into equipment. And for equipment, we have the Nagakiba with Bloodblade on it. We have the Naginata and Occult Affinity on both, by the way, with Spectral Lance. White Mask, we have the Cloth Pants on. Shard of Alexander, Blue Dancer Charm, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Thorny tier, and Faith tier. By the way, to clarify real quick, the Blue Dancer Charm under 8, a weight of 8, will give you a 14% increase. Under 16, it gives you 12, and under 24, it gives you 8%. We have 60 Vigor, 60 Arcane. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. And this is just a funny clip I put in at the end here. Yeah, he didn't end up trying to platform at all and just jumped right down. They do that sometimes. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching this one and tuning into my top 10 underrated Ashes of War in Eldenring. I hope this was informative. Definitely be sure to sub if you're not subbed yet to my channel. By the way, the video after this one is going to be the top 10 builds for New Game Plus and beyond. A lot of overpowered stuff again. Can't wait for that one. I hope everybody watching this video has the best day possible. Have an amazing day. I will catch everybody soon. Can't wait for the next video and catch you soon.